How in the world did Black Rock Shooter go from a random original character posted on Pixiv to an anime television series airing on the primetime block Noid Anima, with a script by Mari Okada, one of the industry's most in-demand and prolific writers, animation from perhaps the most renowned character animator in the industry today, Megumi Kouno, Hiroyuki motherfucking Imaishi handling CG battle direction, voice acting superstar Kana Hanazawa voicing its main character, and a whole host of other talents, like webgen animator Ryo Timo, responsible for standout cuts of animation that include, among others, the minute-long running sequence that serves as the beginning of The Girl Who Leapt Through Time's emotional climax, the Shinobu bath scene in Nisei Monogatari, and the special attack that marked one of the dramatic high points of Madoka Magica. To answer that question, we must dive into the fascinating rabbit hole that is the history of this IP, and witness the incredible journey it took, as it gathered tremendous high-profile and noteworthy talent all along the way. This won't just be an aggregation of the dozens of various wiki, ANN, and Sakugaboru pages this information spans, though. This concentration of talent resulted in works that are fascinating to examine themselves, analyses I will move into once we've explored the context behind their creation, with the revelations I had when watching Okada's version of Black Rock Shooter specifically being something that truly astounded and enlightened me to the artistic vision that runs throughout all of her work. Illustrator Fuke first posted his character Black Rock Shooter to his blog and the website Pixiv at the end of 2007, where it got noticed by Ryo, the head of the J-pop outfit called Supercell. They posted a Hatsune Miku music video to Nico Nico Doga in July of the following year, 2008, and over the course of the following year it gained over 2 million views. Only a month after this video had been posted, Supercell released its debut single, and went on to be deemed one of 2009's 5 best new Japanese artists of 2009, during the 2010 Japan Gold Disc Award competition. The rising tide of Black Rock Shooter's out-of-nowhere success lifted all boats, with Supercell having sold well over 200,000 copies of its 3 albums combined since that video's release, and the media journey of Black Rock Shooter the character only just beginning. Having surpassed that 2 million view count in the summer of 2009, the Black Rock Shooter OVA was released 1 year later, on July 4th, 2010. Who created this OVA? Why, Studio Ardet, of course. Haven't heard of them? I wouldn't blame you, what with them not having any anime outside of BRS whose production they were the most prominent studio on. What you may have heard of, though, is Studio Ardet's founder, the man, the myth, the meme, Yutaka Yamamoto, or as he's often referred to as, Yamakan. Back in 2011, he vowed his series Fractale would save anime, and that he was staking his career on it, promising to leave the industry should it fail. Well, a meager 833 disc sales of the series later, it seems like he was still raring to go, reneging on that promise and instead making his series Wake Up Girls at Studio Ardet. More recently, he has been in the news for saying his advice for those interested in joining the anime industry is don't, for saying he declares baby metal the very forefront of contemporary art, and for proclaiming anime is dead at an Osaka event. Oh yeah, and he also sold futons, pillows, and some of his anime DVDs on an internet shopping show that got 105 viewers last month. Let's take a look at the man behind the memes, though, and start at the beginning of his involvement with the anime industry. Yamakan entered the industry in the late 90s, doing some minor work on Martian successor Nadesco, and then assistant episode directing for Generator Gall Episode 11, an episode that had production cooperation from Kyoto Animation. In 2001, he was now episode director, working on another Kyoto Animation co-produced episode, this time for Jungle wa Itsumono Hara Nochi Gu Final. In 2003, Kyoto Animation made the first anime whose production it was the leading studio on, Full Metal Panic Fumofu, and brought Yamakan in to episode direct and storyboard. At this point in time, he was actually working for Animation Do, a Kyoto Animation subsidiary based in his home prefecture, Osaka, probably most noteworthy for being where Free got its start as an anime production. And after more storyboarding and episode direction on Full Metal Panic: The Second Raid, he really got his chance to make an impression as the assistant director on the OVA Munto 2 Beyond the Walls of Time in 2005, after which he was one of Animation Do's most prominent staff members. If you'd like to read up on them a bit, the Sakuga blog has a post that goes into Studio Do and their relation to Kyoto Animation that I'll link in the description. He did more of the work we're familiar with him being tasked with on KyoAni's key adaptations in the mid-2000s, and then the next important career milestone for him came around, The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. Beyond the episode direction and storyboarding, he was also the series production director, and most importantly, it was he who created the Hare Hare Yukai dance that served as the series' EG. This became an absolute craze, and legitimately one of anime's most iconic moments, really launching him into industry prominence. With that under his belt, he finally got the chance to direct a series of his own, 2007's Lucky Star. Or, part of a series, that is. You see, after the first 4 episodes of the series, he was fired. The official statement from Kyoto Animation was that he has not yet reached a level required of a director, but many suspect the volatility of his personality likely played a larger role than any potential issues they may have had with his performance itself, as Kyoto Animation tends to be a studio that will nurture and put effort into developing young talents. Upon his departure from the studio, Yamakana ended up bringing some of that talent that KyoAni is bursting at the seams with along with him, forming his studio Ordet before Lucky Star had finished airing. Satoshi Kadawaki, who was the assistant director all the way back on Munto 2, and who had animated a cut from Yamakan's Hare Hare Yukai Dance, would serve as chief anime director of Studio Ordet's first production, Kannagi, which they co-produced with Studio A-1 Pictures in 2008, and he'd do some key animation on the Black Rock Shooter OVA as well. This relationship with A1 Pictures was actually key to some of the talent Black Rock Shooter would acquire when its television series was produced in 2012, because they were able to draw upon a number of ex-Gainax staff who had worked on the first season of Idolmaster at A1 only a month before Black Rock Shooter began airing. We're getting ahead of ourselves, though. Let's take a look at the 2010 Black Rock Shooter OVA. The most important person for this project was another member of Yamakan's KyoAni Exodus, Shinobu Yoshioka, who both directed and scripted the OVA. Although he hasn't directed anything outside of the Black Rock Shooter OVA and TV series, sequences like Mato walking down the hall the day after Yomi has gone missing, shot in a way that hides the eyes of all the students gossiping about that event, leaving them as faceless imposing figures, are really effective at setting the mood and cueing us into Mato's experience at that moment. Another standout scene is when Mato receives a text about Yomi going missing, with the frantic cutting and great accompanying music selling her state of panic. However, as with most of the OVA, whose directing is by and large fairly restrained and straightforward, the animation here is what really does the heavy lifting, with that panic being palpable as she runs out the room. 21 minutes into the OVA, we get an upbeat guitar track setting the mood for about 2 minutes of a montage as the pair of leads bonds. And along with the stills that tend to accompany these sequences in anime, there are also a bunch of cuts of really expressive animation that help convey to us a sense of these characters' growing intimacy, and that remind us of this production's roots in Kyoto Animation and their philosophy. Character designs and animation direction were provided by Yusuke Matsuo, who left Kyoto Animation once Lucky Star had finished airing to be yet another member of the Yamakan Exodus, and who would go on to also design the characters for Idolmaster Cinderella Girls. He also provided this cut, with incredible background animation that makes it one of the most impressive pieces in this OVA. Other notable animators for this project include Toshifumi Akai, who along with doing character designs and chief animation for another A1 production that drew from KyoAni's style, Sora no Oto, more recently directed Porter Robinson's Shelter music video. We'll see Akai's partner in crime for that production a bit later. Oh yeah, and Yutaka Nakamura also contributed a cut. No big deal, just the widely regarded greatest fight animator of all time popping in to help out. While the moments of character animation are great, it is those action sequences that really stand out and make this OVA noteworthy, both the excellence of their animation and their implementation into the OVA and its narrative. Black Rock Shooter alternates between this down-to-earth slice-of-life drama about 2 middle school girls' budding friendship and eventual struggles with that relationship, and these incredibly kinetic action sequences in some kind of post-apocalyptic gothic wasteland, which is really brought to life by art director Atsushi Morikawa, who also performed that role for things like Sword of the Stranger and Wolf's Rain. And over the course of the OVA, we begin to become aware of what the connection between these two worlds is. Basically, that other world is a reflection of the real world, and those fights are representation of the conflict that's occurring in a much more low-key manner between Mato and Yomi, with the loneliness and jealousy that Yomi feels in response to Mato growing close to another girl, Yu, going unspoken and unaddressed, even with Mato's prodding when it seems to her that something is bothering Yomi. This concept of having their emotional states and resulting conflict play out in 2 worlds simultaneously, each occupying a different end of the spectrum, is really interesting, and also I think a key to figuring out what exactly is going on when its rather ambiguous ending rolls around. Mato is distraught over the disappearance of Yomi, and finally receives a text in reply to those she sent asking if Yomi was okay, just a blank message. With that, she rushes to a place that had some sentimental value to them, and finding a keepsake of Yomi's on the ground, we now cut to Black Rock Shooter and Deadmaster. The chains Deadmaster has used throughout the OVA and which now hold Black Rock Shooter captive are representative of her desire to control Mato, to possess her. Breaking free from those chains, Black Rock Shooter offers Deadmaster her hand, but she will not accept it. She is terrified of their friendship being on equal terms, of lacking that control. When she is enveloped in a hug from Black Rock Shooter, we see and hear her experiencing torment, rage, and fear, until in her attempts to push Black Rock Shooter away, Deadmaster only pushes herself off of the edge, leaving Yomi behind, and ready to begin a more healthy relationship with Mato. Black Rock Shooter now confronts Mato, asking if she wants to save Yomi, to which Kana Hanazawa replies with her heart-wrenchingly good voice acting. 助けたいとかじゃない。
また一緒に歩き出したい。また一緒に笑い合いたい。今すぐヨミに会いたい。
Then we finally get the title name dropped.
ブラックロックシューター。
And smash cut right to the badass tune Braveheart as credits begin to roll. But wait, there's an after credits scene. While what specifically happened to Yomi in the real world is never explained, I believe that is totally secondary to the emotional and personal journey it represented, and as such I don't have too much of an issue with them jumping back in here and just showing that her relationship with Mato seems to have been mended. What we do see implications of, though, is Yu now feeling left out, something that might have been intended to set up some kind of sequel, but that for the purposes of this OVA's canon will not get explored any further. While the roots of much of the talent for the Black Rock Shooter OVA trace back to Kyoto Animation, it is the mix of Gainax, ex-Gainax, and Studio Trigger staff that were infused into the TV series that make it noteworthy in this regard. We will begin in October of 2011, just over 2 months before Black Rock Shooter TV began airing, and when a MyAnimeList news report revealed the founding of a new company, Ultra Super Pictures. This was a joint holding company established by Yamakan Studio Ordet, the CG studio Sanzigen, most well known at the time for things like their work on Tiger and Bunny, Gundam 00, and Mawaru Penguin Drum, and another studio that had been founded only 2 months before Ultra Super Pictures, Hiroyuki Imaishi's Studio Trigger. Studio Sanzigen shares a building with Studio Trigger, and because of that, there's often some staff sharing on various projects the two studios work on, like Hiroyuki Imaishi coming in to do some storyboarding work for Sanzigen's recent series, Bubuki Buranki, and that show's director, Daizen Komatsuda, doing some episode direction for Trigger's first TV anime, Kill La Kill, which Studio Sanzigen also provided CG for. This is where some of Black Rock Shooter TV's key staff members came from, such as Hiroshi Kobayashi, noteworthy for work on Kill La Kill and more recently directing the series Kisniver, who storyboarded and directed Black Rock Shooter TV's 4th episode, and also Akira Amemiya, who directed what was Trigger's first anime, Inferno Cop, the stylistically similar Ninja Slayer, and one of the Animator Expo shorts that's basically transforming robot sequence after transforming robot sequence in his homage to a tokusatsu series from the mid-90s, although he couldn't resist letting that Inferno Cop style make a cameo in this one as well. Amemiya provided layouts, storyboards, key animation, and episode direction for this project, and is one of those ex-Gainax staffers who had gone to A-1 Pictures to work on Idolmaster. I highly recommend the Canapa Effects video on Megumi Kouno, which does a great job of laying out this movement of ex-Gainax talent towards the Idolmaster franchise. And as mentioned earlier, Kouno does make an appearance here, having been able to provide a few cuts for the later part of the series since her workload on the first season of Idolmaster only 2 months prior had been so heavy. The character designs and animation direction were courtesy of Yusuke Yoshigaki, who joined Studio Gainax the same year as Imaishi back in 1994, becoming fast friends with him. Yoshigaki did key animation for a bunch of Gainax productions and headed over to Trigger to do key animation on Little Witch Academia and Kill La Kill, before getting to do character designs and animation direction again in 2016 with Trigger's own Space Patrol Luluko. With Yoshigaki performing these roles instead of Yusuke Matsuo, who you'll remember did them for the OVA, we begin to see a shift in production philosophy. The subtle character animation and nuanced low-key emotional expression of Matsuo's Kyoto animation roots that drove the OVA is an approach that BRS-TV takes in a radically different direction, opting instead for more dramatic, exaggerated emotional outbursts. That approach likely owes a good deal of its debts to writer Mari Okada, however, who wrote the screenplay for Black Rock Shooter TV, with Shinobu Yoshioka only being the anime's director this time around. Let's talk about Ms. Okada then. She's certainly a controversial figure, with a large contingent of detractors in the West due to her very emotional, often melodramatic characters and situations, and with themes of obsession and intense devotion to very specific people and ideals being commonplace in her works. It can often feel tough to get too invested in them, because their characters care so much about things that we are not given strong reasons to care about ourselves, leading to some real dissonance. Go watch Digibro's video on Okada for more discussion of her. I didn't like her rendition of Black Rock Shooter over the course of its initial episodes. Kagari's emotional hang-ups and outbursts were too extreme to really be believable, and any chance I did have to buy into her as just one of those rare people who are really unhinged was totally eliminated when her arc reached a conclusion, and Yomi proceeded to descend into that same level of cartoonish insanity. I liked the OVA's contrast between subdued, unspoken feelings in its real world, and then them getting played out dramatically in the alternate world. And with that dichotomy no longer being there, with both settings being so overwrought, I felt less engaged. As more characters began to have similar breakdowns, though, I realized what Okada was doing here. While they certainly aren't realistic people, a verisimilitude began to unveil itself. All of this behavior was internally consistent, and I realized that Okada was simply crafting a world that was entirely her own. It was the end of episode 5 where I began shouting aloud in excitement as I started cracking the Okada code. In this episode, even our protagonist Mato seemed to be somewhat insane now, with everyone around her wondering what she's going on about as she asks where Yu is, someone none of them can remember. Mato runs down the street to see Yu's house, where she went to hang out as a child, and yet when she gets to where she remembers it being, the street simply ends and she arrives at a body of water. I realized that it wasn't that these were crazy human people, but a set of characters who were normal for this world, one that simply operated in a way totally different from our own. The key to unlocking Okada's style is in Mato's ensuing exchange with Yu, however. Yu explains how this other world works. The versions of everyone that exist there take on the stress and emotional issues of their real-world counterparts, with these characters as fights representing real-world conflicts. When one of them dies, all those hang-ups die with them, freeing people of their burdens, but also the memories associated with them. So for example, while Deadmaster dying would relieve Yomi of the torment caused to her by her conflict with Mato, it would do so by removing her connection to Mato from her memory entirely. In response to this revelation, Mato insists, "You don't resolve emotional problems by having someone die or be killed. You talk to each other, you vent your feelings, and then you work it out. Letting someone else take it on or whatever is just crazy." Yu agrees with that, and all of a sudden the music swells, a track fittingly titled Heaven that consists of dramatic church organs, chimes, and a soaring choir. In another series, this would cue the preparatory speech, with Yu telling Mato to prepare for battle, to steel herself for the fight ahead, and then to go forth. And in a way, this is what she does. But it is the battle that she tells Mato to fight that is so fascinating here. Talk to her, vent your feelings, without relying on anyone. That's what you want to do, right? It's tough solving something like that on your own. I bet it'll be incredibly tough. Those of you who have seen my analyses of another Okada series, Kniver, may be seeing the parallels here. This is remarkably similar to her railing against systems and institutions being the arbiters of human connections, and her insistence is that it is personal interaction that people need to engage in, taking the initiative to form and maintain those connections for themselves. In Kniver, the Kizna system was the enemy. Here, it is this alternate world that handles your emotional pain for you. And on top of this, the only real representative of the institution of school that we see, the student's counselor, is framed in an incredibly malicious light for most of the series. This noble task Mato is being given, with as much weight as the hymnic music and dramatic lighting can confer upon it, is to go speak honestly to someone, to bear her feelings face to face, without any sort of help from an authority or system. This is what Okada views as an ultimate act of courage and heroism, and this is why her series tend to be so emotionally overwrought. These melodramatic outbursts that dominate the shows she writes are in some way her vision for human interaction. She thinks we should be showing our hands, laying our feelings bare, bluntly and honestly telling people what we are thinking, so that we can have real, fulfilling relationships with each other freed from the shackles of our suspicions, apprehensions, and regrets. I have to wonder if having worked on this show of Okada's, and perhaps having these themes resonate with him at all, caused the aforementioned Hiroshi Kobayashi to have Okada write his series Kniver, and explore these topics in it as well. This is not to say that armed with this knowledge, you now have an obligation to go out and enjoy everything she writes. Her works tend to take place in these weird alternate realities where characters play out her vision, but if the unrelatability of that turns you off, that's completely understandable. It was once I'd realized both the internal consistency and the artistic vision behind it that I personally could really start enjoying Black Rock Shooter, though. Some of the more over-the-top bouts of insanity did have me laughing aloud at their absurdity. Its moments of being grimdark were fun in the kind of edgy way that made Shinji's breakdowns in End of Eva so viscerally thrilling to me as an adolescent, even if they don't match those moments in thematic and psychological profundity. The directing of Yoshioka becomes a bit more prominent, seemingly seeking to match Okada's own emotional peaks and valleys. Scenes like Kohata's counseling session in episode 3 are legitimately unnerving and creepy, and lighting is used to excellent effect throughout, to convey Yomi's mindset in particular, be it her fear of Kagari, or the depths of her emotional turmoil once she has her breakdown. What really must be focused on when discussing its sense of style and fun edge is those fight scenes, though. When you get to the point where Black Rock Shooter tears off her own arm to hurl it and its massive freaking sword at her opponent, which then starts shooting a goddamn machine gun as it flies towards her, and after it impales itself in the ground, it sprouts another fucking machine gun that for some reason it has installed pointing backwards, and you aren't having the time of your life, then maybe Imaishi ain't the man for you. That isn't even peak Imaishi though, because in the following episode he calls back to Gainax by having Black Rock Shooter surf across a pool of lava on her sword, before transitioning into an Inazuma kick, paying an awesome homage to Gainax greats of the past. The Black Rock Shooter anime projects ended up being absolute treasure troves of industry talent, and more importantly, gave those talents chances to really shine and imbue something with their distinctive styles in some of their purest forms. With the lukewarm receptions they seem to have had, these anime may even have had less of a lasting impact on the Western fandom than the incredibly cool and badass character designs did on their own, spawning plenty of fan art and countless figures that I am very sad not to possess right now. With my overview here, though, I hope I've helped to bring just how many different points of interest these projects contain to light, wherever your interests in specific aspects of the medium may lie, because Black Rock Shooter managed to touch upon most of them. Take this as an example of just how fascinating this industry is, and start looking into your own favorites or simply productions that piqued your interest to see what fascinating stories exist there, just waiting to be told. This video is in and of itself a bit of a fascinating story, one you can read below in much more detail in my pinned comment. But in brief, it's reflective of where Patreon will hopefully allow me to get to one day, and what these wonderful supporters are helping work towards right now. A big thank you to Carkeys, Skylar Morrow, Nadeto64, Magic Dragon, Mackenzie Knowles, Keiko Cat, Christian Emery, Presto Puma, Laugher Omi Fomi, Marcus Gand, Sam Lasaraptor, Tyler aka Gigs, Shoko Asahara, Lord Liquid Bacon II, Izumi69, Kieran Rice, Valkion, Tincho37, Taktoa, Cherry Boy Writer, Mathwiz97, Joji Matthews, Culver James Kamai, Shofty, Zaros Tenjin, Psyker, Zeria, Sakamoto Mio, Darian De Sotel, Joaquim Alfelt, McCool Man, and all my other patrons.